Hey everybody, it's Tyler, host of the Tyler Knows Everything podcast, where the nose is crossed out because I always want to learn more. We're 2 weeks away from my first live event, Saturday, September the 28th from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. at Hard Bean Coffee in Lumberton. So let's talk about what's going to happen at this live event. Well, you may have said to yourself, hey, that would be really cool to be a guest on a podcast, but I don't have enough content to say talk for an hour, or you may be nervous about it. Well, this is a chance that you can come by. I'm going to have the microphones, cameras all set up. Come chat with me for like 5 minutes, and then at the end of the live event, I'm going to splice together all the different clips and make one giant episode out of everybody that comes and stops by. It's going to be a lot of fun. My guest today is week number 2 of Powerful Women in the Community that are doing great things. Please welcome Amber Arcana.
Tyler
knows
everything.
All right, everybody, we're here with Amber Arcana, and just about an hour ago, I was over at Madison's with your husband, and me and Dwayne were trying to determine if you were Mrs. John Arcana or if he is Mr. Amber Arcana, because you're getting pretty popular in the community as well.
Well, it also depends on what year, because when he first moved here, he was Amber Clark's boyfriend.
Right.
Then it eventually was like, oh, you're Amber Arcana's husband. And then he got into real estate, and then all of a sudden I was John Arcana's wife. We joke about I need to get a shirt made that says I'm John Arcana's wife, or get him one that says Amber Arcana's husband.
Right.
And now it's that and the twins' mom.
Yeah, and that was probably the time that you had the twins mostly by yourself at home while he was out making the deals, and so everybody met John.
Yes.
And you were locked up in the children twins prison.
Yeah. And I mean, he started when I was, I don't know, 3 months pregnant or something, because we knew like if we didn't do it then, it just wasn't going to happen, because it would be too real, right? And all I did was sleep then, so. Yeah,
for sure. But you have an interesting story before that, before you even met John, and then now you've worked your way up the ladder through business development, which is cool because that's kind of like a new title that wasn't always around. You've had marketing and you've had sales, and you had the combination of sales and marketing, but business development it's kind of new. I mean, when I first started hearing that, in the early 2000s, I was like, what is it? So how would you describe it?
I mean, I feel like that's what marketing is. It just, I feel like the title seems more legitimate than marketing,
Sure.
Kind
of like when they took sales and replaced it with account executive or account manager.
Yes,
similar to that.
Yes. But too, I find what I've seen recently is, like I just took a new job, and you may have some people already on an account, but if they saw me and saw, hey, she has some good relationships in here too, let's bring her in and help develop that business. And rather than just like a marketing where you're just doing like sales pitches and commercials or ads or whatnot, like you're truly going in and you're developing and working with your guys on the inside. For me, my guys on the inside and my other teammates on developing the business.
Yeah, so in typical sales, you're not really focused on your team, you're focused on yourself. Whereas you're in a role where you're more a team leader and showing them how they can.
Yeah, we just work together,
Yeah.
Which that's new for me, to be honest. My past experience, it was me. I was running a family business and doing sales, and I had one other guy doing sales, and we didn't really cross over each other's accounts. Maybe if one of us was having a hard time getting in somewhere, we would just like trade off and like somebody else would go in. And then even in my last job, there was one other person. So this is really my first experience having a full-on team where we do joint sales calls and, there's a common goal there.
Sure. So let's take it back to where it all started. So,
all right.
Born and raised in Southeast Texas.
Sour Lake. I grew up, yeah. So we moved to Sour Lake when I was in first grade. So from first grade on, I went to Hardin-Jefferson, graduated there, went to Lamar.
So Lamar alumni, and what was your major for undergrad studies?
So my major was family studies. My minor was social work. The goal was to be a therapist. So I got my master's degree in social work. somehow I ended up in oil and gas.
Yeah, and the master's was actually from
U of H.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
there's a brief time period where you went from Lamar to Louisiana, right?
Yes, I moved to New Orleans. I signed on with AmeriCorps. It's like a domestic Peace Corps. It's a 9-month stint. You get like a little grant for grad school, but also hadn't applied yet because I didn't really know the process. I'm the first one out of either side of my family to go to college. So I didn't really know the process. So I was kind of figuring it out there toward the end of undergrad. And one of the teachers was like, you really need to do this. And I saw an opportunity in New Orleans with the Red Cross. And I was like, cool, that'll be fun, you know?
Yeah.
I moved there. And 2 weeks later, Katrina hit.
While you're working for the Red Cross?
Yeah. So I actually, August 26th, I think it was the 26th or 25th. It all kind of runs together. It was a Friday.
Right, yeah.
I went back home. My brother's birthday was that weekend. I was like, I'm going to go celebrate his birthday because I had just moved away, you know. And so I woke up Saturday morning to my boss saying, hey, you need to get back here. That hurricane turned. Because when I left, they were like, hey, plan on being in Florida on Monday. We're probably going to ship some people out to help with this hurricane that's coming through.
Right.
And they called me. They're like, you got to get back now. So I head back. I'm 22 years old. I was still, even though I didn't live with my parents the whole time in undergrad, I was still living here, you know. Sour Lake had a flashing red light. They didn't have a red light, you know.
I don't even think they have a lake. I think it's false Arizona.
Yeah, they used to have a sulfur lake.
And that's
it
how
was
it got
healing,
its name.
right?
Okay. So they called you back before Katrina hit.
Yes.
So you had to go to New Orleans before.
So I hit Academy and I got a sleeping bag because I wasn't able to go back to my apartment even. Get a sleeping bag and some rubber boots. I don't know, something else. I had only packed what I packed to go home for the weekend. And I remember hitting Baton Rouge and the traffic was at a dead stop headed west and east was wide open. And I thought, oh crap, what am I into, you know? So I get back and they had planned on putting us young because there's 3 of us in the AmeriCorps team or whatever.
Yeah.
They had planned on us being partnered with vets basically. And they had so many people that they had to put together some last minute shelters. There were 2 ladies from New York that worked for Red Cross that were in New Orleans celebrating the fact that one of them had just quit the Red Cross.
Oh, wow.
They couldn't get a flight out, so they came to the Red Cross, and they ended up signing up as volunteers. So those 2, me and one other young person, ended up managing an emergency shelter.
Wow, because you're a staffer, so you're in charge of all the volunteers.
Yeah.
You're in charge of the people coming in.
Yep.
And it was, I mean, for New Orleans, it was a huge population.
Oh my goodness, it was
Did
insane.
you ever have to go to the Superdome at that time?
So I didn't actually go to the Superdome, but I was on the North Shore. But people don't understand. I mean, I guess we kind of do in this area now because of Harvey. You can kind of quantify the size of what a storm can do, what the weather can do, right?
Yeah, sure.
But before that, no one really could put it in their heads.
Right.
So even though we were on the North Shore, and this was before cell phones were like what we have now, like the service was really not that great.
Yeah. I remember being on the road, and at that time, there was so many people on the roads that the towers couldn't handle it.
That's right.
And so you pretty much had no service.
Yeah. So we didn't. And so the only communication we had was the police officers that you had to have security. And so they would leave and come back and like check in and out. And they would kind of give us some communications or whatever. But right before our shelter closed, because we ran out of supplies, we had people coming off the rooftops. I mean, I saw little kids come in, shorts, no shoes, no shirt, and you know the mosquitoes in this area. So you know, I didn't have. If you don't have enough supplies for everyone, you can't give anyone anything. It was the rules then.
Yeah.
So I had a little boy come up to me, and he was like, hungry, thirsty. I had nothing to do. I could spray him down with off, and that was it. And that was kind of my breaking point for that.
Right.
We ended up closing ours down because we ran out of supplies, moved people on, and I came back, and I was like, I got to get a break. I mean, that was a whole new world for me.
Yeah, I remember that during Harvey, I volunteered for a day at the Civic Center, which was American Red Cross, and there were so many people that wanted to bring food, and they kind of had to say no because they said if it comes from a restaurant, then we know it was health code regulated.
That's right.
And so like Cheddar's and other restaurants donated stuff, but people were bringing like vats and crock pots full of spaghetti, and they're like, yeah, we can't take that because we don't
It's
know.
liability.
Yeah, we don't know because the Red Cross is going to serve it. So if something happens, obviously,
Yeah.
And that's where the churches get away with it, because churches will just be like, hey, hot dogs,
Come on.
Yeah. And so people don't understand that there's a lot more hoops you have to jump through.
That's
when it's
right.
The Red Cross, but. Yeah, you found yourself a younger man in Louisiana, right?
No, I didn't even meet him then. I didn't meet him then.
So you were coincidentally working, I guess, across from...
My apartment was basically across the street from his high school. He was a senior in high school, and I was 22.
Okay.
We never met. We never crossed paths.
Right.
Because when I was in New Orleans, they were basically evacuated for several months.
Okay.
And then... I don't remember all the details. They ended up having all the grandmas live with them because everybody else had flooded. So we didn't meet. We didn't meet till I was 29. I was 22 at the time when I lived in New Orleans. But it could have been very. We probably did pass each other on the road and had no idea. You know.
Yeah, that's right. So y'all didn't meet until CrossFit certification. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
years later.
Yeah. So you'd been a CrossFit athlete for a few years.
Yeah.
And then you decided that maybe you want to side hustle and be a coach a little bit.
Yeah. So my cousin and I, we decided we were going to do that. This was after grad school. We both worked together at Altus Hospice at the time. She was a nurse, I was a social worker. We were just looking to do something different. And so we'd been doing CrossFit for a few years. We'd go to Tomball, Texas, and Cinco de Mayo, 2012. Mm-hmm. And lo and behold, there was John and his buddy, and, we all ended up hanging out.
Yeah, because he wanted to be a gym owner.
Yeah. So his plan was, that was the closest certification place for him.
That's crazy because now they're,
it's
all
everywhere. Well, you got to think back too. So like, this is when the regionals was in Tomball, not San Antonio.
Yeah.
And it was like...
And I think 2012 was the year that Neil Riley went to regionals.
It was either that year or the year before.
Maybe before, yeah.
I think it was the year before.
And that was so far from now. Like, I remember him competing in regionals in like... And it was... Like, in Chucks, in like Converse Chucks,
Yep.
He would never do that now.
No. And and that's like everybody's hands were getting like burns because it was outside, and
that was the
people
one.
planning all this are out of California where you can work out outside in June and July, right?
That's exactly what it was. That was Mohawk Neil.
Yeah, it was. That's right.
Yeah.
And so we decided to go do that, and it was a much different time then. It's a lot easier. There wasn't
now
many people.
Now they're in stadiums. Everything is immaculate looking. Yeah, I remember the old parking lot workworkouts and competitions.
Man. Yeah.
Well, even that first games I think was out in the field. That they had with Dave. What's his name? Dave Castro.
Yep.
Yeah. And or at the ranch. That's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
So John goes back because he wants to be a gym owner, right?
Mm-hmm. And at that time, my parents had just bought their business back. They had a pipe valve and fitting supply company.
Yeah. So did they started the business, but then sold it, I guess, right?
Yes, they sold it to a company, and that company really was more of like an investment company. They had bought a fabrication and construction company, and that the construction company had a big job with Pemex in Mexico, so they wanted to buy their own supplies and run it through themselves, basically. Yeah. So they bought my family's business, but within a few years, like that was 2008, I believe. By 2012, they had run it into the ground. So my dad got it back at a discount, basically.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And
just did what he did before.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
And that's what's interesting about, you were mentioning that you were the first one from either side to go to college and get a degree, and that in Southeast Texas, there's you see a lot of the business owners that are in that blue collar industry that started a business from and didn't have a lot of background in accounting or marketing or anything that we did.
That's
and
right.
they're able to be successful. They're just hardworking and driven, I guess, and maybe produce a good product or service that kind of outweighs where they have a lot of word of mouth.
That's right.
And you bring in somebody that has a degree to do the marketing.
Yeah.
And then take it to the next level, I guess.
So I had agreed to go work for the family business this go around. The first time they sold it, I was just graduating from U of H. So I was like, I'm going to go be a therapist and do my thing and, whatever. So I had already committed to that. And then we figured out we were going to be pretty serious. I was like, look, I can't move. I've committed to this, and so he ended up being the one to come here. And it was a huge culture shock for him, for sure.
I bet, yeah.
Yeah.
He tells me all about New Orleans and comparing Louisiana and stuff. I think especially on a Sunday when I think you wanted to go grab a beer.
You want to go to the liquor store.
Yeah.
You can't.
And he's like, yeah, I can. I'm over 21. I can do what I want. And
Uh-huh.
like, not in Texas on a Sunday.
Nope. Nope. That's right. That's right.
But yeah, so I think he did a short stint at your family business,
He
right?
did. I was his boss.
Yeah.
That works out a lot better for
And
me that way.
Well, I remember being in your business for like a day or two,
Oh,
and,
yeah.
and kind of experiencing the environment, and I was like, there's no way John would have made it in here. It's hilarious. It's probably like me when when I started my new thing, and they made fun of me because I was wearing slacks. You know?
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah, for sure.
You're like, where are your jeans at? You know?
That's right. Uh-huh. It was
And
pretty
then
interesting.
you wear jeans, and they're like, why are they so skinny? Yeah.
That's right. Oh, yeah. People make comments. So I walked out. My kids are usually asleep when I leave the house in the mornings because my days get started pretty early. But for whatever reason, Lane was awake, of course. And I walk out and I had jeans on, which on the weekends, I don't really wear jeans, So he goes, those daddy's jeans? I said, these aren't daddy's jeans, maybe, because they were skinny jeans, So he's used to John wearing the skinny jeans. But anybody else around here, they think, what's wrong?
Yeah, so John, and of course, a lot of people remember John from episode 2, where he became a realtor in a community of people that have been doing real estate for 20 years, 30 years, and really made a name for himself.
Yeah.
And so right about that time is probably when you had the twins. And did twins run in the family, or do you?
No, we did fertility.
Yeah. So do you think that maybe caused the twins?
Because that definitely caused the twins.
For sure.
For sure. So we knew. So the way we did IVF, and basically you can pay to do extra testing on the embryos if you have some that are viable. So they can look at them and they can say, yeah, these are good, but that's just the eye test, right? And so then you can pay extra to get them tested. Well, part of that is that you the chromosome count.
Right.
So then sex of the babies.
Yeah.
And so what we decided to do was put a boy and a girl in. If one took, it'd be a surprise. And if they both took, we thought, oh, we'll be done.
Yeah.
Well, that was definitely naive, lack of parenting experience thoughts. But obviously we wouldn't go back and change it now. But,
no, for sure. And I tell John all the time, because he's not a morning person. And I say, I've got a teenager, first year teenager, 13, and then a 10-year-old. They're right at 2 years apart, about 2.5 years apart. And I tell them it's going to get like exponentially easier once they get to kindergarten. And then when they are where they are now, one in middle school, one in like intermediate school, it's fun. You almost get to play again and be cool again. Because I remember when my kids were toddlers and infants, first of all, you miss out on so many things. And you try to take them with you when you can.
That's right.
But then you also get a little bit uncool for a minute because you're spending all your time on Nick Jr. and Disney Channel and all of that stuff. And so now my kids are
back in the mainstream world, right?
Because my daughter was telling me a story the other day where, actually my dad told her a story that when I was little, we were going somewhere, and my mom threw a CD out the window because it was one of my, and I was like, yeah, I bet it was a rap CD, huh? It was back when I ordered like 10 CDs for a penny from Columbia House. Because when it's your birthday or Christmas, you can't put like Snoop Dogg Doggy Style on your Christmas list, right? You just got to order it on the down low, and then when it comes in the mail, you're jamming. And so they're like, oh, well, can we listen to that? And I'm like, no, not at all. And they're like, well, if we can't listen to it, then maybe you shouldn't listen to it. And boom, out the window it goes. And I said, that's kind of an interesting dynamic, because think about right now. So my parents listened to their music and they didn't adapt to, our music. Mm-hmm. Whereas I'm listening to Post Malone and my daughter's listening to Post Malone.
I know.
And I don't feel like I'm getting older. I just kind of, I stay with the trends.
Yeah.
I'm listening to the same stuff, watching the same movies. Clean versions for them when possible. If they're listening to anything on Pandora or YouTube, I'm always like, hey, make sure it's the clean version, and they know that. But it's kind of weird that our parents do that, and I'm wondering, like, are we going to be in the nursing home one day?
Jamming to Post Malone.
Maybe, or whatever's cool then.
Whatever's cool then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. But yeah, I think it's definitely going to get easier for you guys. But it's crazy because you have two at the same age, going through the same things, the potty training, all at the same time.
It's tough.
Whereas if they're 2 years apart, then kind of you have a little helper sometimes.
Yeah.
You probably saw that with Dwayne and Jen. Like that made their daughter mature a little bit, like holding the baby
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
more responsibility.
I don't know, man. So I always say, like, Kennedy could have been potty trained for over a year by the time that she was potty trained.
Yeah.
Lane probably wasn't really ready until a couple months before.
Boys are always later. They
But
don't really
once
care.
he was able to, on it, ready. One morning, he came in there and he was like, "Mom, I need help. And I went to put him on the potty and, take his jammies down. And he had taken his pull-up off in the middle of the night because he didn't want that. And then I went back in his room and it was like in the floor. Like, once he was done, he was done. And Kennedy still, if you let her wear a pull-up all day long,
And
she's working smarter, not harder, you know?
Yeah.
That's her all day long.
It's amazing that they don't sleep. They're like, they don't. It's not that they stay up late or wake up early. They just don't sleep. They do both. They go to bed late and then they get out of bed.
Wake up early.
And
Yeah. I don't know when they wake up. I mean,
I don't know when they sleep.
I don't either. Like, it's insane.
And so
our
that's kind of
son
where
is really the ninja of that.
And that's where I guess the Arcana Chronicles came from, because you have so many social media posts that are hilarious.
So the Arcana Chronicles really started when they were about 6 months old. They were they got really sick. They were in daycare at the time.
Oh, okay.
And we went from the flu to RSV, which looking back now, I feel like they probably should have been put in the hospital, and we didn't know because it drug out for a long time. I remember 11 days in, no sleep, calling my mom and just crying and be like, "We need help." I actually threw a bottle at the wall and put a hole in the wall during the original Arcana Chronicles, right? Yeah, it's not my proudest moment, but it was like, you just get to this place where you're not sleeping because it's not like you can take turns. They're both not able to breathe. They both needed you. Like, so we had the flu, we had RSV, we had double ear infections, thrush. On their birthday, I had Lane in the doctor's office, and they said he had Fifth's disease. But once you saw the rash, it was fine. You could send him back to daycare. And I was like, okay, well, I want some blood work done because I'm like, they've been so sick. They had sinus infections and thrush. And, I mean, by the time they were from 6 months to 1, they saw a medicine syringe. They were screaming at you. Yeah. They were, like, not wanting it. And so I bring him back to daycare. And a couple of days later, Kennedy has this rash, too. And I'm like, what the heck? So I'm like, well, it must be Fifth's disease. So we go for their 1-year shots. And the doctor's like, let me swab him. They had strep. I sent him to school with strep, and he gave strep to the whole freaking class. I was mortified. Oh. So that is where it started from, because it was like I was losing it so badly that I had to like kind of have this like sarcastic real talk vent outlet, whatever, on Facebook, and I just started hashtagging the Arcana Chronicles. I didn't think people were really paying attention. It was kind of more just to like get it out there, right?
Yeah.
So after the 6 months to a year, people were like, "We missed the Arcana Chronicles. Where are the Arcana Chronicles?" I'm like, I'll post some. So I started posting some here and there. And then more people started seeing. I was like, okay, well, I'll create a Instagram, for them. And I kind of thought, I was like, is there going to be enough content for this? Well, there is surely enough content.
They haven't slowed down yet.
No. And it's like, like I said, I'm out the house before they're even awake. And then I get home at 5 or, sometimes I got to work late. And then John's working evenings. And it's like you're constantly outnumbered.
Yeah. Yeah, because probably most people want to see a house when they're not at work. And
that's right.
So that's after hours and
that's
weekends
right.
and things. And so what are some things that y'all have learned over the past 2 years that from, maybe doing it wrong to doing it right as far as the work-life balance with the family?
Well, my husband, he has no balance.
Yeah.
I say I'm the wife of a workaholic realtor. We just do the best we can, and I feel like that changes from day to day because of our jobs. And you have to have really good support. We've been lucky enough that we have sitters, some girls from Lamar that have treated our kids like little siblings. Mm-hmm. You just have to have a good support system, and you have to be open with each other. And we try at the beginning of the week, say, look, I'm going to have this, and this, and I don't know if we can get a sitter for this. And you definitely have to communicate, because you don't want, I feel like I probably have I have a lot more balance than he does. Mm-hmm. I'm able to work from home on Fridays, and so I take that time to really give them the quality time.
Yeah.
But during the week, it's like survival mode every day. You just
Oh,
try to sit down and enjoy everything. Just like I took them to Galveston while I had some days off, and you just learn. You're like, you can't make them have fun, right? Like I took them to the Rainforest Cafe, thinking this would be so fun, and every 30 minutes the rainforest like it rains and it makes a noise.
And the
they were both like
animals-
jumping on my lap, screaming, and I'm
Yeah.
like, why am I forcing this?
Yeah, yeah, that's funny. I remember going through the same thing. I remember all the stages of Rainforest Cafe where you take them and they're scared,
Yeah.
and then you take them and they love it, and
Yeah.
they spend like $100 in the gift shop.
That's right.
So
that's
that's
right.
the next.
That's
step.
the next stage.
Yeah.
But another part of this, the Arcana Chronicles, we're in this age of social media and everybody's highlight reel, and I'm just so in love with my kids and my husband and my life and all this, and like this is real life, man.
Yeah.
And if you're struggling too, I'm here. Like this is real life. This is you have to be a little bit vulnerable in it, and so some days it's like, should I post this? And I post it, and sure enough, someone's like, I'm so glad to know I'm not alone. Like
totally
in this because this is, life's hard. Life's hard. And two, you get caught up in seeing, well, why is their life so easy? And mine's like over here just being real, you know? And so I found too, and even just right before I came here, like I ran into somebody and she's like, I love the Arcana Chronicles. And she's like, I'm on the same page. And this is, and especially there's so many women working now. It's a much different time and age than the 90s, the 80s, the 70s, the 60s, where
For sure.
a wife could be the support at home. She could handle everything at home, handle the kids. And now it's like you have to be a team.
Yeah, I think that we're pretty much past the time of like housewives and stuff. They're still out there and they're doing a good job, but that's like a very specific income level and career path that the husband would have to have in order for that to happen. And that's just not the norm anymore, especially for millennials. You're not going to find hardly any millennials that are going to be doing the housewife thing.
And
they're going to have dual sources of income.
That's right. Well, and we like being able to take them to do stuff, and we like being able to go on dates and take trips and all that. And so, yeah, you could do it, but then you have to like sacrifice in other areas.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that you have to go do and all that, but like there are experiences that I want to give my kids, and
Do y'all typically keep it spontaneous or like a schedule for like the date night?
Oh man. We're kind of at people's mercy.
Yeah,
Who can help?
Probably at that age, it's more spontaneous. It's when you get around to it, or when there's an event and you use that event as a date night.
Yeah.
Because when they're in school, then it's a little bit easier. Because that's the good thing about right now, you have to coordinate with babysitters, and then pretty soon you've got 9 months out of the year where they're at school from like 8 a.m. to like 3 p.m. and that's like a huge.
Well,
schedule.
and they during the school year they go to Trinity Mother's Day out.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And so we pay for extended care, and so they are there. John,
how smart did they get from that, right?
Man, it's awesome. And we've recently learned so we split them up for summer school, their little summer program, and they get along so much better because they're around each other every waking moment. Yeah. No one's around. I'm not even around John that much. Yeah. And regular siblings aren't around each other that much. So that's been a godsend. But I lost my track on where we're going. But
are they vaccinated?
They are. I do have. I have friends that have kids that aren't vaccinated.
We do. Yeah.
And the more I learn about, so Lane has some food allergies, and I feel like, and John will say I'm crazy, right? So John's not. I'm still a little bit crunchy. Like I like our doctor because she'll avoid antibiotics if at all possible, and we'll try to use like the powdered vitamin C, and I try to use oils and Epsom salts in their bath and all that, which is a relatively new thing for me to be doing. But what I found was Lane was sick once a month. Out of nowhere, he'd run fever in March, 7 days fever. There was nothing wrong with him. We didn't know. But so as I was looking back, and this is not to say that I wouldn't have vaccinated him. I'm sure I still would have, but Lane has a casein allergy. And if you go back and look at these vaccines, some of them have that in there. And I feel like at some point his little system was overloaded. And it killed his immune system. And then on top of them being in daycare and that 6 months to 12 month period where I didn't know what else to do but give them antibiotics. It was like their little immune systems couldn't build up. So I'm kind of in the process now of letting it build itself back up. And I'll tell you what, it's worked. So John tells me I'm a crazy hippie sometimes, and I'm thinking you don't even know, but it's working. So it's like you know.
Yeah, I couldn't even count the number of pink amoxicillin bottles that I've gone through,
man.
over the years, and you wonder sometimes, like, decades and decades of this stuff. It's not even. Is it even doing any good? Is it doing more harm than good?
Yeah, well, and especially like if you don't finish it, then
and it's overprescribed for everything because
absolutely
there's been 10 different symptoms and I've gotten the same prescription.
Right.
For that.
That's right. As a matter of fact, we had a little incident with Kennedy, and I took her into like a neighbors or something, and they couldn't really find anything wrong with her. Her ear was a little red, so he prescribed an antibiotic, and I was like, I don't know. And then the next day she still had fever, and I was like, well, maybe I need to. So I tried to get filled, and no one could fill it. And I was like, well, we're just going to take her to their pediatrician. Her pediatrician was like, no, her ear's fine. Like, she's good. I'm glad you didn't give it to her. She didn't need it.
Yeah.
And you just wonder how many times that happens. And then it does kill their immune systems.
Right.
I mean, because I don't remember people having tubes when we were kids. And now, like, it is common. Every kid has tubes in their ears, I feel like.
For sure.
Like, Lane doesn't, but Kennedy does,
Oh, okay.
I don't know. There's definitely something different for, do you ever remember even getting, like, ibuprofen when you were a kid?
No.
And, like, now they have kid ibuprofen.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, infant ibuprofen, taught, all the different stages of ibuprofen.
So your body doesn't even have to fight stuff off on its own.
Which is terrible for your gut bacteria. Sometimes you really need it just for that one dose, but I think long-term ibuprofen is really bad for your gut flora, which also has a lot to do with immunity and things. I think that's really cool what y'all did with the, checking out the chromosomes on the eggs. What do you think about where that's headed in the future, where you could like pick traits and pick?
Man,
I
don't know. It's like a slippery slope. And who's to say that's not happening now already, right? With people that really can afford it.
Yeah.
You can pick
most likely.
Yeah. I think for us, it was just a benefit to it, because for us it was like, okay, if we're gonna do this, we don't want to put an embryo in that's already not gonna take. Like, it's set ourselves up for failure. And so, I don't know.
The real controversial issue is we're on the cusp of almost eliminating babies that are born with Down syndrome. And so what they're worried about is, what if there comes a day where there's no more Down syndrome? So you think, okay, well, that's good. All the babies have everything that they need. But then you have the last remaining living people with Down syndrome, and they're like, well, what are we? Like, we don't exist anymore?
Yeah.
So that's kind of weird, the transition.
That is, yeah. And too, it's like,
because if you could minimize birth defects, if you could minimize bad immunity and things, then obviously you would want to do that as a civilization. But
it does become a slippery slope. Like, I feel like the intention's probably good, but anytime there's a good intention, there's always someone with a bad intention, right?
Did y'all freeze any of the stem cells?
So, well, we did do save some of the stem cells, but we also have another embryo.
Okay.
So,
but like with the umbilical cord blood, did y'all?
Yeah, we did. We did. We saved that. I mean,
that's really cool, because it's preparing for a technology that doesn't quite exist. Like right now, they can do a few things. Like Hodgkin's lymphoma. Some
very limited
stuff like that. But what if you're 80 and you need a liver, and they can grow you one from your kid's stem cell blood? That's really cool.
And too, I was like, okay, is this one of those things where I could get like a buy one get one, right? Where like, can I just freeze one?
Oh, because there's two umbilical cords.
Yeah, and then like they can just share that, and basically they said no, because one could maybe have an issue that the other one doesn't have, and then they can help each other.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, so we have that.
I remember getting a report of course I just had one, but they spin them and tell you how many cells, and so I guess it's probably different from one kid to the other.
Yeah, all these things that you have to, like, when you're getting ready to have a kid, like, you learn all these things that you have to learn about.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of them for me,
Oh, yeah, for sure. Did you have to have a C-section because of the twins? Because I guess they take
Didn't have to, but my doctor told me that it would be possible that I could have one naturally and then still have to have a C-section, and I was like, I'm out.
Yeah, might as well just get it.
Yeah, so I had a C-section. I carried them to 37 weeks, which is, they consider that full term for twins.
Yeah.
I had them a day early. I ended up having an emergency C-section a day early, but I mean, that's still, it was on the 37th, the date of the 37th week.
Oh, okay.
So it was still pretty good. Yeah.
Nice. Well, so are there any influencers that you have in particular, like on social media or through books or podcasts, that are kind of like your go-to for, you know, the modern businesswoman and mom?
Yeah. So I have listened to You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero twice. I think it's good for any, I say women first, or teenagers coming up, like, you know, obviously you want to, there's a little bit of language in it, but it's very much teaches you how to just believe in yourself. If you want, one of the examples is, you know, if you want to be laying out in the pool with the president of the United States, you can do it, but you have to like put it in your head that you're going to do it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, pick out your bikini now, put yourself in positions where you're going to eventually get into same groups. And, you know, even if other people think it's silly, just do it, you know, because it doesn't matter.
I mean, just a couple hours ago, I was at a ribbon cutting for a new business in the city, and the mayor was there. And, you know, I said, hey, good afternoon, Mayor. You know, you got time for a quick picture? And, like, I nobody else wanted one, just me.
Yeah.
And they probably did, but they didn't ask. And all you got to do, of course, anytime you ask a politician for a favor in public, they're going to say yes.
That's right. That's right.
And then and that's maybe just one thing I do, but it's really cool while I'm there. You know, my phone bings, and I think it's just a random text or an email. I'll pull up. It's a former congressman that sent me a message through Facebook Messenger about coming on the show. You know,
that's so cool. Yeah. That, and I will say, I follow. It's called Nat and Kat. They're moms, and that's kind of what it also kind of sparked the bringing back of the Arcana Chronicles, because they sit there and it's kind of like comedian hour for a little bit when they do like their little videos, but they talk about, like, you know, one of the things is, aren't you tired of packing your kids' lunches and like you put all this time and effort into it, and then 75% of it comes home and you're like, I put so much effort into this. And so following them too, and like I was like, you know what, yeah, like no one's being real anymore.
Yeah.
And so, you know, those are my two kind of go-tos when I need a little pick-me-up.
Yeah, everything on social media is filtered, and professional photography, family pictures, and all that. Nobody's showing the crazy.
Yeah,
you know?
no.
It's all
and
going
then,
on.
like, if you're not posting, people will have something to say about that. Like, what's going on over there? And,
yeah, people
you know,
are
it's
highly
like, I'm working,
overjudged.
man.
Yeah.
I'm working, and I'm taking care of my kids, and just, like, trying to be present with my husband. And it's like, I don't have time for this.
And it's weird that we're in like a Twitter vacuum here in Southeast Texas. You know, I've got thousands and thousands of Facebook friends, and, you know, about 1,000 on Instagram, and like nothing on Twitter. Like,
I don't have Twitter.
That's what I mean. Like a lot of people in Southeast Texas don't even have it.
Yeah.
And it's more of a younger crowd thing and a more bigger city thing, like some of the Silicon Valley cities, and you know, more liberal, what I would call liberal cities. But it's where all the big names and celebrities are, and you get that one retweet, you know, if you can have like a good podcast show or something, and that's what really hypes it up there. But there's so many people on Facebook, from teenager to your grandparents.
Yeah, it's insane.
It's like Facebook is where the old people go. They're not on Instagram.
No.
Because Instagram's all pictures, and that demographic typically doesn't take a lot of pictures of themselves.
Yeah.
And then Twitter, I think they just don't get it. I think they don't understand why do I need Twitter if I already have Facebook? Why it's the same thing? Well, it's not, but I don't know.
Yeah. Well, John always says that, like, I'm not very tech savvy, because Twitter, I mean, it came out, I mean, we're the same. How old are you?
37.
Okay, so you're
class of
you're
2000.
Older. Okay, so you're older than me. So when Twitter came out, it was like, I mean, Facebook came out like, what were we in college?
I had a MySpace first, and Facebook back then was the Facebook, and you had to have a college email address in order to get. And it was kind of it didn't really have the news feed. It was just your profile.
Yeah.
And you're like, hey, I can go see what this person, age, location, and relationship status.
Yeah.
And one picture of them.
Yeah. So it was like, whenever I was really getting into technology and all that, was that era.
Yeah.
Whereas at that time, my husband was in high school.
Do you remember your AOL Instant Messenger username?
I don't. I don't remember it, but I do remember, like, that was where it was at. You went
Yeah.
home, and I remember the computer, the huge computer
Yeah.
was in our like kitchen area.
Oh yeah.
And
yeah.
so, like, anybody could walk up behind you, too. So you,
Right.
like, definitely were on hyper alert, right?
We always had the code, like if parents were watching, it was something else. It would be like a number or something,
That's funny.
and then to like tone down the conversation a
You're
little
like,
bit.
no more Snoop Dogg.
Nope. Yep. Man. And now I can listen to it anytime I want. I've got thousands of songs just streaming through the phone.
I know, it's
So,
wild.
But so what are some advice that you have for these up and coming millennials that are wanting to get married, buy a house, start a family, get a career, walk out of college on day one and have a $50,000 salary? What are they?
Man, so I think there's something to be said in any industry you're in, because I was in medical industry too.
Yeah, so your whole education career was intended to go into therapy and medical
Yes.
and that
Yes.
region, just like mine was intended to go nutrition and science.
Yes.
And neither one of us are doing any of that.
That is correct.
Yeah.
I think the key is you don't know what you want to do when you're
No.
you don't.
You don't know anything when you're 18. You don't know
No.
anything when you're 21.
And I think that you definitely try to go after something that you really enjoy. If you can figure out what that is, go for it, right? But it also needs to be applicable in whatever your long-term goals are. If your goals are to have money, you can't go into certain fields, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And
Certain fields are just capped out.
yeah, and but too, you got to be willing to work from the bottom up. And what I've seen in the best leaders in any industry that I've worked in, they start at the bottom. They know the whole process from the bottom to top. And that was, when I was doing hospice, or when I was working at the behavioral hospital, or in any of the companies I was dealing with in oil and gas. Your best leaders have experienced it all. So don't be too proud to start it at the bottom, even if you have a degree.
Oh yeah.
Learn. There is something to be said from learning from experience of your own and others. Then also, you don't have to get married and have a kid right out of college. There's so much more life. Travel.
What was the amount of time that from married to having the kids? Was it?
So we got married. Well, so our timeline was a little different. I was 31 when we got married, and we kind of knew that there would probably be some fertility issues.
Right.
So I was 33 when we had the kids. Had John and I both
So it's still
been
pretty
younger,
quick. Yeah.
but had we both been had we been the same age, it wouldn't have been the same thing.
Yeah.
Or had we been younger, it wouldn't have been the same thing. Because I
Right.
think he and I are pretty in line with like our goals of, and we had dated for a few years too, so we were able to do some things.
Yeah.
But how cool would it be like to both have like stable jobs and money to go travel and stuff? Because too, once kids come along, it's a game changer.
Yeah, it is.
It's not your life anymore.
Right.
It's theirs.
Yeah. And speaking of working your way from the bottom up, I knew this guy in college who would always have, he was a football player at SFA, had a full ride, super talented, and he would always have a job in the evening. And it would always be at like a fast food joint in like the weirdest situation, like a Burger King that's like attached to a gas station, like inside the gas station, or like a Subway that's a kiosk, or some type of, it was always a franchise, whatever it was. And I mean, every 6 months he would bounce around, and I was like, what is he doing?
He's learning.
So he graduates college, moves to Destin, Florida, and opens multiple Smoothie Kings in Destin. And like at the time, there were no Smoothie Kings in
That's
Destin.
awesome. That's
You know?
awesome.
Who would have thought?
Yeah.
This is 2004.
Yeah.
Smoothie Kings hadn't made their way down to Destin, Florida.
Yeah.
And then uses the money from the Smoothie Kings to open up a fitness facility in Destin. The dude's got it made, and
That's
awesome. People made fun of him for flipping burgers.
Yeah.
But,
well, and you can't worry. You cannot worry what. And I feel like where we're headed for these younger kids is like they're so worried about how many likes they have and how many comments, and that like their confidence lies on that. And who cares? Who cares? Because it just doesn't matter, because whatever your goals are, you have to align yourself up to be successful in what those are. Right. If that means you have to flip burgers in a gas station, Burger King, then that's what you do.
And
I mean,
and it's like he was searching for all the franchises and learning their model and then picking the best one.
Yeah. And, even when I was in undergrad and even after grad school, I always had a second job, and I didn't have to work in undergrad. My parents paid for pretty much everything, but like I always liked to have my own money, and so I always had a couple of just small jobs here and there. I mean, I ran hot shots in my car from Beaumont to Houston for my parents. Like,
Yeah.
I would load up, they would load material up in the back of my red Cougar, two-door Cougar. I remember one time that they were a little nervous because it was kind of back, but I was 20 years old doing that, and I think sometimes it's just in you, though.
Yeah,
it's just in you.
I think in the 90s and prior, people didn't have a name for it. They called it working two jobs to make ends meet, and it wasn't like the cool thing to do. The cool thing to do was have one job that you come home at 5 and you're done. And now it's cool. We call it the side hustle.
Yeah,
and there's all these freelance gigs, and it's kind of the gig economy right now. And it kind of got popular with millennials because they had to do it to survive, because things just inflated so much, and the job market kind of shrank for people that just have a random degree in whatever. And
That's
so
right.
they kind of created it, but they've parlayed it into fun things, where they're doing like Favor and Waiter and Uber and Lyft and things like that. Or freelance writing. A lot of those millennials are good for social media. I mean, if you look at a lot of companies that are doing social media marketing, it's not somebody our age doing it. It's usually somebody a lot younger.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of resume level skills. Somebody was asking me the other day about a lot of stuff I'm doing with the the podcast and everything. And a lot of it's just self-taught. I didn't go to school for any of this.
Right, right.
I wasn't learning camera work and video editing, and the guys from A to Z podcast have helped me out a lot too. From between them and YouTube, it's just kind of.
I was just about to say, you can YouTube anything.
Oh yeah, especially like handiwork stuff around the house. There's a YouTube video about everything, multiple videos, and you can really. I've learned more from podcasts and YouTube than almost college. Especially with the degree in nutrition, a lot of stuff's outdated.
Yeah,
We were just getting rid of the food pyramid, which is, like eat 6 to 12 servings of bread at the bottom.
It blows my mind.
And so it transferred a little bit, in the early 2000s. I would still, not in a rude way, but, still call out some of the old professors like,
Yeah, well, so something else I'm like interested in is that, and I got onto, my mother-in-law actually introduced me to intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
And within that, keto kind of lends itself to that, but it's not like keto like you go to Whataburger and you just take the bun off. Like true eating is, you do the best you can as far as like grass-fed, organic, non-GMO food sources. Because if a cow's eating corn, they're not really meant to. It's gonna alter their body. Then you eat them, and then so on and so forth. And it's still kind of a people are like, you have to have carbs, and I'm like, well, you could get them in broccoli. Like, you don't have to have bread. Like,
they're in the vegetables. Bread is man-made, and so even though bread's been around for a long time, it's not something that you have to survive. You can totally survive. I even did that experiment back in February where I did meat only for 30 days.
Yeah.
And lab results came good.
Yeah. I mean, my best lab results have been when I'm hardcore intermittent fasting, which is a little bit harder when you're doing sales.
Yeah, for sure.
So it limits my ability in that, but it's definitely taught me as a parent, like, I don't know if your parents used to make you finish your plate or eat, like you have to eat a certain time, you have to eat a certain.
Right.
At the age our kids are now, they know if they're hungry.
Yeah.
And you don't have to lure them with Kraft mac and cheese to eat.
Right.
Who wouldn't eat macaroni and cheese even if they're not hungry, or a piece of cake or whatever?
Yeah, I'm definitely more flexible now.
Yeah. Well, and if you're really hungry, like, give them a couple of healthy options. They'll pick one if they're hungry, and if not, then they have to eat.
Yeah, so my son likes breakfast, and my daughter doesn't. And a traditional family would be like, no, that's the most important meal of the day. Well, no, the time doesn't really matter. So she's all she's doing is shrinking her time of her window of eating, from noon to 8 p.m. instead of 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And it's not a big deal because I know there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, because it has to do with like insulin levels and using up we don't use up our stored fats and all of that.
Because believe me, nobody's skipping breakfast if they're hungry. Like, if you're hungry, you're going to eat.
Yeah.
If it's a choice that you would just rather eat the majority of your calories in a 6-hour window or 8-hour window than a 12-hour window.
Yeah. And I feel like too that kind of did trigger, like, to kind of bring it back to the kids and some of my little crunchy ways, if you will. That also kind of got me off into knowing like about I say knowing, trying to learn about vitamin deficiencies. And so, like, it's pretty common for people to be low in D3 and B12, and B12 can mask itself as so many things where people think other problems are wrong, like memory fog or energy, or I think even, I might be misquoting, but I even think like dementia has been linked to it, or like joint problems, because people aren't really checking that, but we're also not eating real food anymore. We're eating this man-made stuff. And so that's part of it. It's not even necessarily just a fit thing. It's like, that's how your body has to run and operate, you know, and brain development.
Anything trendy that is supposed to help dementia, I'm like all on it, because my mom had dementia.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
It came on so fast that she was actually too young for Medicare at the time, because she was only 63.
Yeah, that's young.
And so she had to kind of retire from being a school teacher, abruptly.
It's tough.
And she was in a nursing home facility, and she still looked so young that they would let her walk out of there because they thought she was a visitor.
Oh, man.
So we had to put her in a lockdown facility, but it progressed faster than like almost any case of dementia, and so she ended up passing away because it just overtook you. And that's not really something that transfers from like, oh, your parents had it, now you're gonna have it, but you know that it's out there in your family somewhere.
That's right.
So I'm always trying, because that's the one thing that if you're gonna be alive, you want your mind to be
healthy.
Right. So
and I do think that like kind of people our age are now starting to realize that like nutrition historically as we know it, it's not necessarily right. Because think about it, we're the first generations that our whole life have had boxed diet food, all of these things, and now we're seeing increased rate of infertility, increased rates of cancer, and all of these things, whereas in the 50s that it wasn't as prominent, and even before then, I mean, they died of other things like way back, but like
it was a lot more real food, because even when you watch that documentary about McDonald's, of when McDonald's first started, it's a lot of quality food back then, and it's a little bit more mass produced now.
It's
scary.
Well,
I was saying a little bit. It's all mass produced. For sure now.
So I definitely try to keep that in mind with the kids too. Probably more so than myself, but that's typical, right?
Yeah, for sure. I got on the elderberry train.
Oh, yeah?
I do that once a day.
Okay.
For anything for immunity, because my immunity is already really good. Where maybe one bad cold or flu. I say I've never had the flu. I've never had the flu shot, and I've never had the flu. I don't really know what the flu is. If maybe I've been sick before,
and I just
did it. Yeah, because I'll still go to work. I mean, not in a contagious way, but I'll just. Just ignore it.
I definitely give the kids elderberry drops.
This is where I sound crazy. Is I think that it's so much more of your mental awareness. Like, if you don't accept the fact that you're sick and you just do your normal routine.
I think there is I might not be 100% on with that, but I do think there is part to that, because
a little bit.
Anything that, even just like if you're working out and you're like, I can't do this, I can't do this, can't do this. Well, no, you can't do it.
Well, for sure, you can make yourself sick, at least from stress. Right?
Yes.
And that's mental, because you're only stressed if your
body will just break down.
Yeah. You're not stressed unless you're thinking about something. If you don't get stressed when you're asleep or when you're in a coma. It's always aware, thinking about something. And you can make yourself sick from that, or give yourself an ulcer.
But I do think that like you can definitely exacerbate your symptoms.
Yeah, it could be.
Like you start feeling something, you're like, oh my gosh, I got something. Well, you're definitely more aware. But I think too, like I said, with the kids, they get elderberry syrup, they get vitamin C powder, they get D3 probiotic, and their multivitamin every day.
Yeah, because when one person gets sick in the family, everybody gets sick. Yeah,
and it's not at the same time. It's usually like right after, and so then it just drags on. As a matter of fact, we just finished up. I think Lane started it, then Kennedy, then I had it a little bit, and then John, he's not as consistent in his vitamins and his D3, and so he had the worst. I know, right? Right?
Gotta get on those vitamins, John. All right. Well, so what's the next big thing for Amber Arcana?
Man, I don't know. So I just took a new job. I'm pretty excited about that. I've been toying with the idea of getting a blog, and kind of just going through our journey of, IVF, fertility, all that, and then just like meshing that in with the Arcana Chronicles.
Yeah. I think you should definitely push content and put it on as many platforms as you can.
Yeah.
John sent me a thing just this morning, from Gary Vaynerchuk that said podcasts are like the triple threat, because I've got branding for myself, I've got branding for the guest,
Yeah.
I've got hours and hours of content that I can clip together for short clips, and then if you transcribe that, then you have copy, and you can one day put it into a book. And so I think definitely, blogging got popular with internet, typing and reading.
Yeah.
But you've got we could stop this video, upload, click publish, and it's global.
I know, it's crazy.
Before you even leave this room,
Yeah.
we could even click a different button and live stream it right now.
Yeah.
So you don't have to go through a service and say, you don't have to go to a radio station or a TV station and say, hey, I've got this idea for the the Arcana Chronicles. What do you think? Can we pitch it?
Yeah, you just do it.
No, just do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think you should totally push content. There's far less interesting stuff on reality TV that people are obsessed with than what you're doing.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's relatable. People can learn something from it.
Yeah.
We're going to learn a lot from having you on today.
Yeah. If anybody wants to come babysit, just let us know.
Yeah, you got the new job, the blog, the family life.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to?
No, I mean, we're definitely not having any more kids.
I was wondering about that. So that's decided.
Yeah.
You got one of each. I think I would.
Yeah, just like Thursday, I walked out of the room for 5 minutes, and they got a hold of the Vicks toothpaste, lotion, sunblock, had it all. It was like minty Vicks in the bathroom, and I'm like, I just walked out of here.
Yeah.
So if we added one to that, it could be trouble.
Yeah, it would be an interesting dynamic if you add one like way later, wouldn't it? Like if they're in high school and then you have the baby.
Yeah.
Or a nightmare, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's like at some point you're grateful because you like struggled to have a kid, right? So you don't want to be like, no, but it's like, this is hard. Having two at the same time is hard stuff.
I've seen dual income families that have that situation where they have one that's kind of on their way out, graduating high school, or maybe even out of the house, and then they have the baby, and the baby grows up in a totally different lifestyle than the other two, because you're hustling, you're trying to make it, you're busy, you're not home, you're dragging from one place, you're always in a hurry.
Yeah.
Everywhere you go, you're constantly in a hurry. And then fast forward 18 years, you've made it. You've got maybe assistants working for you by then, and you got a lot of things on on autopilot, and your older kids will come to visit, and they'll be like, who's this? That's got everything that they want in their castle in their room.
That's right. That's right. My brother and I are 5.5 years apart, and my mom always said it was like raising two only kids, and it was kind of the same situation. I mean, at some point, probably around junior high, it's not like that I ever went without anything, right? Because they built their way up, but my brother definitely had the benefits more in high school than I did. Andy was a second. Andy's a boy.
Yeah. You get the younger kid that gets like a brand new car on their birthday for 16, and then you have the hand-me-down and stuff like that. Yeah, it's interesting. Now, I was an only child, and so, my kids actually don't have any aunts or uncles or first cousins. They have like made up, like you can be an aunt, John can be an uncle, just Lane and Kennedy can be cousins there.
That's right.
But yeah, I was an only child of school teachers, so it wasn't like mathematically possible for them to spoil me, but they did everything that they needed,
I will say that I feel like, this is what I tell people now, I'm like, aside from it's stressful to have two kids at the same time, and like I will say the benefit of it is you have to have the same expectations. Like if one's a baby and one's older, then you may treat them differently. If one's a boy and one's a girl, you may treat. They both have to pick up their plate from the table. They both have to put their clothes in the hamper. I mean, we've been doing this since they were at least 2. Like,
that's great.
Put your stuff in the trash, And so I do think that there's some benefit to that, and the fact that like the expectations have to be the same, and you can catch yourself. I feel like dads and moms treat the opposite sex child a little differently.
Yeah, for sure.
That's just part of it, but you definitely are more aware of it. Yeah. And I feel like you try to catch yourself and make it as even playing ground while also trying to make sure that they're an individual at the same time.
Right.
It's like a crazy dynamic.
Yeah. Well, let's wrap this up. Tell everybody where they can find the Arcana Chronicles.
Okay, yeah. So if you go on Instagram, you can find me under the Arcana Chronicles. You can just look up the hashtag, the Arcana Chronicles. That's the ARCANA Chronicles. Or you can look me up on Facebook, Amber Arcana, and I share my chronicles on there. And then hopefully I'll have a blog coming out soon. So.
Yeah, nice. Well, thank you for coming on. We're going to have some consecutive female guests for 1 month in particular.
I love it.
All the powerful females in the community.
Yeah.
I just got to get some of them to quit canceling on me. These chicks are busy, right?
We're taking care of our husbands, our kids, our work husbands, because we got to take care of men in the office place too.
There's nothing worse than a sick husband, is there? Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
That's worse than a sick
That's
kid.
worse than 2 sick kids.
Well, hey, you're welcome back anytime. You check out Mr. Amber Arcana on episode 2 if you haven't already, and get ready for an entire month of powerful females.
I love it. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. All right. Thanks a lot, Amber. Great stuff. Hey, if you haven't already, check out my Patreon page. I'd love to have one new patron on Patreon this month. Just go to www.patreon.com/Tyler Knows Everything. That's www.patreon.com/Tyler Knows Everything, just all together, one word. You can support this podcast for as little as $5. And along with that, you'll get special access, merch, and different things along the way for supporting the great cause. We'll see you next time on the Tyler Knows Everything podcast, where the nose is crossed out because I always want to learn more. See you next week.